Why Turks and Arabs hate each other by living ironically in Europe. I'm assuming honestly it's racism. Anyway, honestly, I'm assuming right. There are arguably right no Turkish people. Like there are no right when people go like, oh, I'm like pure Turkish. No, but you're not. The Turks have always been a mixed like mixed people, right? There's like people from all over the place mixed in there. For example, there's a lot of Greek mixed in there. There's a lot of like other places in there as well. It's like very interesting how the Turkish are like so proud of their nationality, but then at the same time, there are technically quote unquote no Turkish people because they're all just like a mixed group of people. Anyway, now the 1000-degree knife cutting stuff was better indeed. Anyway, we're going in. We're going in. We'll see what we can do. Also, please consider liking and subscribing. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll go in. Curious.
Daddy, where do Turks come from? You see, Timmy, when a boy and a wolf really love each other, and he sticks his...
Well, that's a new DLC, or like Puerto Rican people mixed with everything, essentially, right? The Turkish have an interesting history of like migration and all that stuff, right? Which is so interesting.
Is only two. The Turkish people are very loud and proud, Timmy, and they're the closest thing we got to actual werewolf.
They're really loud and chat. They're really loud and proud. They're so proud of their country. They rather would not live in it. Yeah, I'm saying it the way it is, right? I have so many people here in Germany, right? So many young men, Turkish men in Germany saying, right? Turkey is the best country in the world. Why they live in Germany. And we all know why they live in Germany. It's because Turkey's not the best country in the world. But they don't want to hear that. You know, they were also glazing the Turkish team for the World Cup. And then they, you know, had to go home pretty early. Unlike, right, Turkey's still in, Turkey's still in. Turkey can win against the United States. Well, it doesn't matter. You're still going home. Loud and proud of wolves.
But do not, under any circumstances, do not, I repeat, do not call them Arabs. Got it, Timmy? But why is that? Why do Turks hate Arabs, and why do Arabs hate Turks? How are they different, and where does their hatred for one another come from? Well, today we'll try and answer just that question. Most people in the West look at Turkey and the Arab world as one big sandy desert full of mosques, kebabs, and bearded men holding each other's hands on walks. And on the surface, sure, they are both Muslim and overcharged tourists for sunglasses made in China. But underneath that, there's a civilizational rivalry so deep and so layered that it makes the average European border dispute look like a neighborhood HOA argument. But here's the thing, it's not just that Turkey and the Arab world have political beef. It's that many Turks genuinely look down on Arabs as people. They consider them backwards, uncivilized, and in recent years
That's outrageous. Wait, was that I should be barking with Kai Sana? Yep, that was bro barking. They were barking at each other. Well, yes. That is unfortunately also to a certain degree the right thing to do because see, Turkey looks at Europe. Turkey sees the statistics that Europe has to deal with. Turkey decides we're not going to take those refugees. Rightfully so, because they see it, right? They see what's happening, right? They don't want that to happen to them, right? We have the statistics. We have the overwhelming crime that comes, unfortunately, from these groups. Now, not every one of these people is dangerous. But you can't tell me that, we should allow anybody, to be fair, young military-aged men to come to the Western world, or in this case, Turkey, and then cause mayhem. That's just the harsh reality. They see this, and they don't want to deal with it. So there's that.
welcome guests who are ruining the country. But where did all this begin? Around the 7th century, the early Arab caliphates expanded into the Middle East and pushed all the way into Central Asia, where they encountered the Turkic tribes. The Turks, wanting to know what their women look like under all those covers, converted to Islam. But unlike other cultures in the Middle East, they kept their language,
Are you fucking telling me that the only reason that the Turkish people converted to Islam is so they could touch grass, or women in this case? Okay, I've seen what pussy does to a motherfucker. I've seen what no pussy does to a motherfucker. That is a new one. That is a new one. No way, that's the real reason?
their customs and their identity. And over time, as the Arab caliphates weakened, the Turks rose to dominate the Islamic world, militarily and politically. Many historians point to this struggle as the origin of the Turkish-Arab rivalry, or as I like to call it, 1055 Baghdad skill issue. By the 1500s, the Turkish Ottoman Empire was the undisputed superpower of the Islamic world. Under Sultan Selim I, they conquered Egypt, the Levant, and the holy sites of Mecca and Medina. The Ottoman Sultan now also claimed the title of Caliph, supreme leader of all Sunni Muslims on earth. A hard pill to swallow for the Arabs, but at least they knew what the Greeks felt since 1453. For most of the empire's history, the arrangement held, somewhat. Islam served as the unifying glue that papered over the ethnic differences, like a Middle Eastern precursor to Yugoslavia. And many Arabs rose to high positions in the administration.
In the beginning was the cube.
But by the early 20th century, the glue was dissolving. The Committee of Union and Progress, which came to dominate Ottoman politics, increasingly pursued policies of Turkification. Arabic was marginalized in administration and education. Arab officers faced discrimination, creating deep resentment among Arab elites who had previously felt content living under Ottoman rule. And to be fair, you'd be pissed off too if you had to speak this language. Then came World War I, and let's just say that the Ottoman Empire was labeled the sick man of Europe for a
Well, that's outrageous, but go on!
reason. What followed was economic hardship, forced conscription, and harsh military governance that hit the Arab provinces hard. When Ottoman authorities discovered Arab nationalist societies and executed Arab leaders in Damascus and Beirut in 1915 and 1916 subsequently, hanging them publicly, many Arabs decided that enough was enough. In 1916, Sharif Hussein of Mecca launched the Great Arab Revolt in alliance with the British, because like Vegeta, they mix with everything. The Arabs rose up against the Ottomans and helped.
Is it even called Vegeta? Is it even called Vegeta? Because I feel like we're mispronouncing this. I don't believe it is spelled as the same as the Prince of All Saiyans. I don't believe it's actually said this way. Fucking Vegeta. But I made that joke as well. Look, it's Vegeta. And it's just a mixture of spices. That's crazy.
Accelerate the empire's collapse. And this is one of the first major events that influenced modern relations between the two. From the Arab perspective, the Arabs endured centuries of Turkification, erasure of their culture and oppression, and now that their intellectual
Well, I don't want to say it's justified, but it's kind of justified because the same Islam, the Arabs did the exact same thing. See, we would have multiple different cultures and religions in the Arab, like in the Muslim world, right, as it is today. But the Muslims didn't have it, so they killed and wiped out everything that wasn't Islam. Anyway, moving on. I never said anything.
Intellectuals were hanged for just daring to question Turkish superiority. Enough was enough. They could no longer be a part of the Ottoman Empire. The Turks, on the other hand, saw this as betrayal. In their eyes, their fellow Muslim brothers who lived in the same empire and shared the same history for centuries turned on them by siding with those white-skinned heretics who refused to separate caps from their bottles.
Well, understandable. I fucking hate that. Well, actually, I agree. I don't hate these. I hate these fucking things. Right? They scrape on your mouth. They're not really. And like the thing is, people weren't still right. The thing is like, oh, yeah, not. First of all, I don't even believe that it was that big of a problem for those to get lost. But anyway, they also separate super easily anyway. Also, and that's something that's important to mention. People still throw away the bottles, so it kind of doesn't matter.
Fast forward a century, the Ottoman Empire is gone. Out of its ruins, Turkey's national daddy, Ataturk, built a modern secular state. He deliberately cut the country's ties to Islam, abolished the caliphate, switched the alphabet from squiggly lines to rigid ones, gave everyone surnames, and cut most ties with the Arab world. The Anatolian Peninsula was to return. But Ataturk didn't just leave Islam behind, he left Arab culture behind as well, doing so with a particular disdain that got baked into Turkish national identity. 1930s Turkey established a strong negative depiction of Arabs, associating them with backwardsness and primitivism. This influenced Turkish historiography for decades, with Arabs being frequently stereotyped as uncivilized and incompetent traders, in sharp contrast to the Turks framed as noble, brave, and superior warriors. Surely, no one would ever see the Turks as depraved barbarians. This narrative filtered into academic textbooks, pop culture, and national mythology. The story Turkey told itself about the Arab revolt was simple. We built a glorious empire, we carried Islam for 6 centuries, and the very Arabs who gave us the religion took a big fat dump all over us the moment a European power offered them a deal. The hatred for Arabs because of this was so bad in Turkey that up until the 21st century, the word Arab in the country was a term used for black dogs, or any.
Bro, that's outrageous. And considering how, like, particularly black dogs are hated in Islam, you know exactly how this fucking goes, bro. What the fuck? Okay, I never knew that. That's outrageous. Whoa, that escalated quickly.
Dog with darker fur for that matter, which is especially bad because dogs are seen as an insult to God and everything he stands for in Islam. But it still beats H.P. Lovecraft's cat's name, so, you know. Then came the 21st century. Ataturk has been hanging out with the worms underground for almost a century now. And Turkey came under control of this guy, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Prior to his arrival as head of state, Turkey spent 80 years as a secular NATO member with little interest in Middle Eastern affairs. The Lion does not concern himself with the opinion.
The Lion accepts his receding hairline with dignity. We should do that. White boys, we should do that because we're the ones balding.
Of sheep, but Erdogan was no lion. Originally coming to power in 2003 as prime minister, for the first decade of him in office, Turkey was actually pretty popular in the Arab world. I mean, a Muslim majority country that was simultaneously democratic, economically booming, and a member of a highly successful defensive alliance.
Well, it's also incredibly rare. There's barely any. Right, though obviously now that's not really the case anymore because this bro has been slamming down on that democracy in that country. Yeah, it's pretty rare for a Muslim country to end up democratic because Islam isn't democratic ever at all. It doesn't really work. The only one that's gotten really close is Indonesia, but even Indonesia struggles at times with extremists. So there's that. But yeah, it's kind of difficult for some of these countries to actually deal with this because it's kind of harsh.
Obama, is that you? Cause yes, we can. In the early days of the Arab Spring, Erdogan was literally hailed as a rock star by Arab activists. The gold standard, a model worth following. But then he overplayed his hand. Badly. At the height of the Arab Spring, decades-old dictators started falling, and Erdogan saw in it the opportunity of a lifetime. Turkey treated the Arab Spring as a chance to expand its influence across the entire region, building alliances with the new forces coming to power, particularly Islamist movements, and maybe, just maybe, if the stars aligned just right, he could bring back the empire. The most important of these was the Muslim Brotherhood, a pan-Arab Islamist organization looking to overthrow Arab governments and replace them with Islamic fundamentalism. When Brotherhood
The Sharia that the one that the UK loves so much. Anyway,
candidate Mohamed Morsi won Egypt's presidency in 2012, Turkey and Egypt became best friends overnight. Erdogan hoped to ride the Brotherhood's electoral success in Egypt to eventually usurp Saudi Arabia as the de facto leader of the Sunni Islamic world. Then Egypt's military staged a coup in 2013, removed Morsi, and declared the Brotherhood a terrorist organization, with Saudi and UAE funding behind the whole operation. By supporting and offering refuge to the Muslim Brotherhood, Erdogan made an enemy of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the Emirates, three of the most powerful Arab states. Then, in 2017, came the Qatari crisis, where many Arab states launched a full diplomatic and economic blockade against Qatar, accusing it of funding terrorism and being too close to Iran. Naturally, Erdogan backed Qatar during the Gulf blockade, deploying Turkish troops there in direct opposition to the Saudi-UAE bloc. Then, in 2018, Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi was murdered inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, and Erdogan made sure to leak Turkish intelligence findings as publicly and painfully as possible. By 2019, Qatar was Erdogan's only friend left in the Middle East, his sphere of influence reduced to a tiny desert country the size of Kosovo. So, it's easy to say that Turkish meddling in Arab politics hasn't garnered the country any favors. And we've established that historical reasons as to why Turks see Arabs with contempt. But what seems to have lit the fuse in recent times? Well, how about 3 million refugees? If there's anything every country blames its all shortcomings on, then that's immigrants. And the same goes for Turkey. When the Syrian civil crisis erupted in 2011, Turkey opened its borders to millions of refugees fleeing the conflict. By 2018, it was hosting more asylum seekers than any country on earth, that being 3.4 million. While Turkey initially welcomed refugees, being their Muslim brothers and all, the prolonged nature of the conflict strained public resources and tested local communities. Add to that, the already crashing Turkish economy wasn't very
well, understandable though, because unfortunately this is also connected to crime. Well, that is just a harsh reality, right? Because while good people leave, bad people leave as well. That is just right. It's not it's not a little girl leaving a war-torn country that is the enemy. But if a Islamic extremist enters the country, then that's a different story, and we need to talk about this because well, Turkey got the dose of that problem. Europe got it. The UK got it especially, right? Let's not remember, right? Let's talk about the ongoing grooming gang problem over there.
capable of feeding 3.4 million starving mouths. As we're used to by now, this provided fertile ground for xenophobic rhetoric, with Syrians and Arabs in general being scapegoated as the cause of Turkey's economic woes. Narratives spread on social media claiming that Arabs receive preferential treatment in public service.
Well, while they're not alone at fault, right? The economy was already crushing, as said. It does put additional strain on the country, and if you don't have the capacity to pick up this many refugees, arguably also refugees that technically don't align probably with Turkey's values, right? And then eventually Turkey started sending them to us, which they don't align with Western values either, you're gonna run into problems. That is just a harsh reality. And if the problems get too much, the local population starts fighting back.
Services occupy housing meant for Turkish citizens and are unwilling to integrate. The anti-Arabist contempt that had been simmering since Kemalist times suddenly had a living, breathing target to put the blame on. Opposition leaders competed to promise the fastest deportations. One Turkish politician warned that Turkey risked becoming a Middle Eastern country because of the Arab influx, when it clearly was a proud European one instead. In a study by the International Organization for Migration, nearly half of Turkish respondents described Syrians as a less talented race. 92% of Syrians living in Turkey reported being exposed to discrimination, and 1/3 of Turks didn't even believe Syrian refugees were victims of war. I wonder where we heard this before. But now, here's where it gets genuinely weird. While the governments were busy having diplomatic meltdowns and Turkish nationalists were busy painting Arabs as subhuman leeches, ordinary Arab people from all over the world were becoming obsessed with Turkish television, specifically Turkish soap operas. You might have heard of them. Heck, your grandma is probably binging them on Kanal D as you're watching this.
Shit, here we go again.
These shows have conquered hearts and minds across the globe, achieving record viewership. The show that started it all was Gümüş, aka Noor, a fairly standard romantic drama. On August 30th, 2008, 85 million Arab viewers were glued to their TV sets for its grand finale. Imagine the entire population.
Ain't no fucking way. They're treating this like it's the Goku vs. Jiren fight. Crazy.
Of Germany, watching a Turkish love story live at the same time. Then came the Magnificent Century, a prestige drama all about the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman and his saucy love life. Over 500 million viewers tuned in globally, including enormous Arab audiences in countries whose grandparents fought to be free of Ottoman rule. But how come Turkish soap operas became as popular as they did? Well, that's because they're like crack to women in developing countries. Two reasons. First, Turkish soaps were dubbed into a Syrian accented colloquial Arabic, making them emotionally accessible, intimate, like the familiar drama Next Door. Second, and more importantly, they occupied a cultural lane nobody else was in. Characters who were modern and cosmopolitan, drinking wine, kissing in public, going to nightclubs, but who also prayed, called their mothers every day, and respected their elders. You know, they did shit you don't see in Hollywood very often. It was a vision of Muslim modernity that neither Western shows nor conservative Arab broadcasts could offer. Arab governments eventually took note of the irony and immediately panicked. In 2018, while all the geopolitical chaos was unfolding, Saudi Arabia and the UAE suspended all Turkish dramas from broadcast. I mean, what kind of self-respecting autocracy would leave blatant enemy propaganda waltz around freely on people's TVs and phones? Egypt's official religious authority went further, publishing a fatwa, an official Islamic patch note, if you will, accusing Turkey of trying to create an area of influence in the Middle East through soft power, and stating that Turkish series should not be watched in any way.
You are spreading rom-com rom dramas everywhere, and you're removing all people from Islam. Anyway.
Way whatsoever. A fatwa against soap operas. And inshallah, Balkan grandmothers will follow it. You know, to be fair, they really
The Turkish dramas are corrupting the youth.
are brain rot for menopausal women. I'd be much happier catching my granny watching a 10-hour Tung 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 Sahur compilation. King Salman Abdulaziz, you're a real one for banning him. Ultimately, the relationship between Turkey and the Arab world is complicated. Unlike other people groups like the Japanese, Koreans, and Chinese who've hated each other for centuries and written detailed green texts on 4chan about their disdain for one another, Turks.
Understandable though. I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it.
Arabs don't hate each other as much. There's genuine ethnic and cultural pride on both sides that can turn into tribalism and constant dick measuring contests at times. There's a real historical wound from 1916 that neither side has fully processed. There's a decade-old narrative painting Arabs as backwards people, ruining the Turkish economy and Turkey, while at the same time there's a modern political rivalry between the two competing visions of what the Muslim world should look like and who gets to lead it. But also, there's 85 million people watching the same Turkish soap opera finale on the same night. There's Arab tourists flooding Istanbul every summer. There's a magnificent century dubbed in Arabic being fawned over by countries that the show's own sultan once ruled over by force. The hatred where it exists is mostly performed by governments, politicians, and keyboard warriors. But the actual people, they seem to find each other a lot more interesting than anyone official.
Well, to be fair, would you actually like pass by? Like, if I passed by an Austrian person, I probably wouldn't know from the looks that they're Austrian, and that probably goes for most Arab people as well, right? If you see a Turkish person, chances are, what's the difference, right?
Admits. But what do you think? If you're Turkish or Arab, what has been your experience with one another? Have you experienced this hatred? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, smash that like button, and if you really enjoyed,
Sadly, I had bullies that were Turkish, so I'm not Turkish or nor Arabic. I'm German and Italian. But they were bullies, so my view isn't that high of them, but whatever. Right? That's been school times. They do make a banger kebab there. Anyway, wonderful. Wonderful. Keep at it, guys. Maybe in a few thousand years you'll finally get along.